This apartment's located in Rushcutters Bay, which is a suburb in walking distance of the city, as well as Sydney Harbour. This apartment building was built in the 1960s, and there's about 40 studio apartments in the block. This apartment's 24 square metres. When we first got the apartment, it was completely different to what it currently is. When you walked in the original apartment, you entered through a corridor which contained the kitchen, and the living space was combined with the bedroom. We completely demolished everything within the existing apartment. We decided it was really important to have a strong divide between what's sleeping and what's living. So we contained the amenities of the apartment and the sleeping space to the smallest possible area, so the living area could be as big as possible. So the design idea was to have a sliding screen that could determine the function of the apartment at any one time. We spent a lot of time trying to work out what the screen should be, whether it was one screen, two screens, whether it was glass or whether it was something perforated. We settled on a timber screen. The timber screen creates a visual separation from the bedroom to the living area while still allowing light to pass through when the bedroom space is closed. At night, it can slide over the kitchen, opens up a sleeping space. There's a little open shelf which acts as a bedside table and includes integrated lighting. The bed's raised up and includes drawers underneath it for extra storage. One thing unique about the apartment is the full width windows, and we wanted to make that obvious from the moment you walk in. We angled the joinery unit next to the bed so that you can pick up light and a sense of space. The material palette was kept to a minimum. The black butt timber screen is the same as the black butt timber floor. That it added a softness to the apartment. The bathroom and walk-in robe are accessed via a hidden door. Combining the bathroom and your walk-in robe makes the whole space feel much bigger. The grey tiles in the bathroom complement the timber floor, gives the whole apartment a really earthy feel. And combined with concealed lighting, create a luxurious feel as well. As soon as you walk through that door, there's a full-length mirror beyond. Gives you a sense of a larger space. The kitchen was really carefully considered. It includes a fridge, an oven, a dish drawer. One of my favourite parts of the apartment is the cutlery drawer because it asks the question of what is actually required from a cutlery drawer. And instead of the cutlery having to sit side by side, it can sit back to back. The kitchen also integrates a little appliance cupboard, incorporate a full-height pantry stack. With the minimal material palette, our bench top and splashback are also a grey concrete. Something that we always try to do is create designated spaces within our apartments. So there's a space for sleeping, there's a space for living, there's a bathroom, there's a walk-in robe in this case. And within that, you have all the elements that you're required to make you comfortable. Cities like Sydney have some amazing old housing stock that's been solidly built and isn't going anywhere. And repurposing that amazing housing stock to bring it up to the way we want to live our life now, or just giving it a refresh, is one of the most sustainable ways we can continue to grow our cities.
The Cairo Flats are listed on the Heritage Register as being historically significant. one of the first examples of serially arranged flats, so side by side and stacked on top of one another. Also for their so-called heroic use of cantilevered concrete in the balconies and the spiral staircase. This apartment is a meagre 23.1 square metres. But the challenge of an apartment like this obviously is, in 23 square metres, how can you have an apartment where you can sleep, study, entertain, all the things that you might want to do in a normal house. Even though they're quite small, they do a couple of things that make them feel much bigger. As soon as you walk in the door, you're greeted with an expanse of view onto the garden. The apartment does a number of things quite well. Firstly, they're north facing, so they're getting a lot of great natural light. You've got windows on both sides of the apartment, so you get really excellent cross ventilation. So it was really important in a space like this to get things in the right position. I made a few minor modifications to the space, moving things out of the way where they're cluttering free movement. Bookshelves, wardrobe, bed, extra objects stuck in the room, they're all integrated into the wall. When you're designing a small space, you really need to make sure that you're using the edges of a room well, that you've got places where you can put furniture without interrupting paths of movement. So you want to be very conscious of where the doors are, how you're moving through a space, and where you're going to place furniture within that. So the curtain's definitely a bit of a theatrical element. I can use it to cover up all of my clothes and books and personal bits and pieces and make it a bit more of a living space rather than a bedroom. Often you have curtains bunched up either side of a window, and that often cuts out about a metre of window space. But with a curtain that you can pull right off the window, you get to enjoy the full view, so making the most of the sense of expansive space that extends out into the garden. I guess when you're designing a small space, you want to make sure that everything needs to be performing at least one, if not two or three functions. If I have friends over for dinner, I take my desk, which doubles as my dining table, I pull it out into the middle of the room, bring a couple of the outside chairs in, and then I've got a dining setting. The challenge of living in a space this small is designing it in ways so that you can enjoy all of the things that a normal house would have. Somewhere to sleep, somewhere to eat, somewhere to study. This window used to be the kitchen door, which meant that you couldn't actually put anything up against that wall. Closing that in and turning it into a servery window meant that I can now fold the bed down into that position. At night time, I pull the curtain back, the bed folds down, and it comes all the way around to the front window and closes the room in, makes it a nice cozy space to sleep. The kitchen was renovated in around about 2000 by someone who lived here before me and hasn't been modified since. The bathroom is almost frustratingly large given the size of this very small apartment. It's actually bigger than the kitchen, which seems mad now. Because the bathroom's so large, it kind of makes it the perfect space to have your laundry as well. So there's a washing machine in there. It has a bathtub. I was definitely keen on keeping that bathtub. It's a little bit of luxury in such a small space. I think when you've got a really well-built building like the Cairo Flats, the last thing you want to be doing, apart from its historical value, is knocking it down, because it's providing another kind of housing which doesn't really exist elsewhere, which really suits a certain kind of resident at a certain time in their lives. And an apartment like this demonstrates that you don't need a McMansion to fulfill all of your needs. A place of this size isn't going to suit everybody, but nevertheless it demonstrates that if you're clever with space, you can live in a smaller footprint than you otherwise might think. Populations are growing. We need to be thinking about how we're going to house people more space efficiently. It's, environmentally irresponsible just knocking buildings down and building new all the time. We need to be thinking about how we can repurpose what we've already got.
Never Too Small Magazine Issue 1. Jam-packed with stories, surprises, ideas and inspiration, all with you city dwellers in mind. Step into the world of Atama, where romanticism, artisanal craftsmanship and Italian flair are distilled into jewel box-like apartments. Visit the studio of Ramesh Mario Nithyendran, where Barbie, big cats and Buddhas inspire his colourful creations. Explore 3 of our favourite small footprint homes from around the world, each featuring nifty pull-out floor plans, and discover a treasure trove of vintage and pre-loved apartment finds. interrogate the origins and appeal of a slouchy 70s icon, and meet our mate, Robbie Neville, who wants us to get better at making shit with the shit we already have. Find out why the Barbican is London's greatest mistake, and discover a new breed of pet furniture designed for style and our small footprint lives. Plus, there's storage porn, sexy bikes, chairs with bums, and a beautiful pull-out poster surprise. Buy issue 1 now in our store or join the NTS Sub Club and never miss an issue, all while enjoying free shipping. Visit nevertoosmall.com/magazine.
I had been on a walk in a rainforest in Queenstown in Tasmania, really deep green rainforest. And this idea came to me that a green kitchen would be really nice in this space. The brief was just to introduce new contemporary joinery that could house a more modern life, leaving space for a little spontaneity to happen in the space. My name's Eleanor Perez. I'm an architect and I live in this 27 metre squared studio. Ballina is a pair of heritage brick buildings in Darlinghurst, which is an inner city Sydney suburb that has loads of shops, pubs, cafes around the neighbourhood. We're on the Gadigal lands of the Eora Nation. So I used to go to inspections to look at the architecture details when I was studying architecture of these old Art Deco buildings. I just liked them. When this place came up for sale, I had started to look for something to invest in, and I came in here and thought, I've been here before. This feels really familiar. And I was like, oh yeah, I came here years ago and it felt good then and it still felt good. These are Art Deco buildings, so built around 1930 with special brick details at the entrances, coloured tiles in the entry floor and stained glass windows through the stairwell. These kind of buildings I think are really typical of Sydney. It was originally built for the nuns that volunteered at the nearby hospital. I wanted to make the space feel large and spacious, but also provide a lot of storage and proper cooking facilities and all the tools for everyday life. When I first saw the space, it was a simple studio layout, seating around the window that moved into a kitchen space quite separate, and there was a partition wall separating the main living bedroom area from the kitchen. Removing that large cupboard allowed a continuous piece of bench height joinery to run from the back wall all the way through into the living space. And on the other wall, a longer, taller joinery element that incorporated a cooking nook. As you enter into the apartment, you see the original floors, which have been sanded back and re-oiled. Above the door, all the technology like NBN and internet and a projector are hidden by a special art piece my friend Ed made. On the back of the door and around the wall are hooks to hang your bags, coats, umbrella. Because storage space is tight, I use drawers underneath the bed by the door to store all my shoes. The first space you enter into is quite flexible. It's the living, working, dining corner. There's two large original windows here, which is one of my favourite parts of the apartment. They face east and they have this beautiful light streaming in the morning. They have block-out blind over both and a floor-to-ceiling sheer curtain that really soften this corner. You get a great breeze flowing through these two windows and they're a really lovely memory of the original design. There's a set of stacking stools that move around the apartment as need be. If more friends come over, they store plants or I use them as a stool to get up to high cupboards. I love to collect books and have them on display in the space. Where the tall joinery meets with the living space was a perfect corner to integrate a small library. The best part of the new kitchen is that it no longer feels like a separate space. The mirror definitely makes the depth of the space feel greater. The bench itself is a stainless steel folded bench with the sink welded in. The green, there's a laminate material sprayed with a Resine custom finish. We've built in a washer dryer mini laundry under the bench, an integrated dishwasher, general storage. On the taller side of the kitchen, there's an integrated fridge and freezer, a small wardrobe, an oven, drawers to store all the cooking equipment. In the cooking nook, the same stainless steel bench top is used, but to mount an integrated gas burner stove. The wall tiles in the kitchen are the same Kit Kat Japanese ceramic product. I wanted to create a special feature, so I commissioned a friend to design a series of custom insert tiles to scatter around that almost create a small exhibition throughout the space. The new light in the kitchen uses the original electrical point and eye hooks to track new lighting across to different spaces where we needed it. So in the kitchen, it's above the sink. The bed is a king. A lot of people suggest I have a smaller bed to make better use of the space, but the king feels palatial and creates so much storage underneath. Most of the things I own in the apartment are under the bed. Shoes, bags, jackets. In the middle underneath, there's a large, longer space for suitcases and larger items. The bedside table is a folded sheet metal shelf. I needed a space to have objects by the bed that still gave access to the drawers underneath and through to the bathroom. That rock, it's from a residency I did in the west coast of Tassie. And one of my friends makes artwork with rocks, and he gave that to me when he gave me a tour of the mines. The bathroom is the only space in the apartment with its own door, which is the original door. It's almost 100 years old, and we stripped back the paint off that window to reveal this beautiful fluted glass. The floor tiles in the bathroom are a new light terrazzo, which are a nod to features of terrazzo throughout the building. The bath is original and has just been sprayed with an enamel paint. I put in a floor-to-ceiling white shower curtain in this space so that when you're not showering, the space feels as big as possible. And there's a large mirror cabinet mounted on the wall that creates this great shelf on top to store small objects that I collect. We're lucky that the apartment is on the corner because that means the bathroom has a window into the alleyway between the two buildings, and that brings beautiful fresh air into the space. The wall tiles are the same as in the kitchen, with small paintings by Angus scattered around. When designing a small space, I think it's important to make that space work hard so that living in it feels a little more simple. In designing a tiny home, I was quite inspired by how Japanese people live in big cities, especially in Tokyo. Actually, people end up spending a lot of their time outside the apartment, and I think that's a really beautiful balance between creating a really peaceful place inside, but also places where you have a sense of community.
"5S" is a Japanese methodology, roughly translate to sort, set in order, standardise, sustain and shine. The inspiration for this design came from the clients and their interest in minimalism and exploring ways to live with less and be very ingrained in their locale and in the local amenity. It's a late 60s building, sort of built in that 50s style, or a very sort of modern style, and it has really wonderful views, and the balconies are expressed on the outside of the building. This is a 24 square metre space. Originally the kitchen is where the sleeping nook is now. The kitchen was moved out of that space. We split the kitchen into two wings, a wet kitchen which has the sink, the hot water unit and some storage underneath, and an area to dry things over the top of the kitchen. As you wash up, you can just store things directly in the cupboard, and then you can just rely on them drying and dripping down into the sink. And then the dry kitchen is an area primarily for cooking and for preparation. The bench for the dry kitchen is very much like a workbench, and it has a sort of floating quality to give the space a lightness. It also has a table that can be neatly stored away as part of the kitchen and then brought out when it comes time to dining. The bathroom was adapted from the original bathroom. What we did is actually maintain what was nice about the original bathroom and then put an additional contemporary layer over the top for the bathroom. In the sleeping nook, we used the overhead space above where you would sleep for the storage of clothes. It's always a good idea in small spaces to be able to use the space that is otherwise left void. To best separate the sleeping nook from the whole, or from the living area, we decided to employ a folding perforated metal screen. And the idea is that that gives us some level of privacy between the two zones. It also enables the permeation of light and breeze. And one of the briefs from the clients from the outset was that they wanted a TV both in the living room and a TV in the bedroom. We decided, well, we could have the one TV service both areas, and we could fit it to the folding wall. One of the things that we did in the beginning is make a catalogue of all of the items that the owners had intended to put into the place. That was right down to the appliance they would use in a kitchen but they didn't want seen, and then applied the Japanese 5S methodology to the storage requirements for the apartment. The clients could sort of sort and sustain their belongings and consider the things that they lived amongst. Good small space design for me is an outcome where the function or the utility of that space is perfectly matched to the beauty of the space. This design, it's a kind of blank canvas for the occupants to live with less and to not detract from the wonderful view that the apartment benefits from.
How you experience space is marked by the sequence of moving through space, through varying heights and through material change. It's all about contrast, it's all about depth, it's all about layering of views. The apartment block is built in the 1950s. It's 28 square meters. We gutted the apartment completely, and then we installed a couple of steel beams to pick up loads from above. Then it allowed me to completely reorganize the space below. The apartment is a series of small spaces. The first half of the space is marked by 3 compartments: the kitchen, the bathroom, and the threshold. As you come in, there's that tile on the ground which continues on into the bathroom, which continues up the wall, which ends at the ceiling, gives you that sense of continuity from one space into the next. The choice of black and red, it's used to heighten an already intimate space. The full height mirror layers the space even further. What binds the kitchen and the bathroom together is a threshold that hides all your plumbing, and the wardrobe is camouflaged in this portal. All of that you would find in a typical kitchen is now compressed, but everything's still there. All it takes is a bit of jigsaw. Having that black kitchen as you come into the space pulls your eye through the kitchen, through the light, gives you a hint of what's in the next room. If you're preparing food in the kitchen, the all matte black background recedes and the immediacy of what's in your hand is heightened. The benchtop is a servery, but it's also easy mise en place. With the joinery, we went full height, so there is deep storage, which is accessible from both sides. If you can't reach the top shelf from the kitchen, then you can reach it from the platform on the other side. The platform, it's about the range of affordances that come with this horizontal plane, rather than fixed elements. The simple plane creates a space under and over, so there's that transition in height as well, so the volume of the space is changed. It's a space that the bed sits on. The bed slides under, put the table on the platform. It seats 6 comfortably. The ply continues on along the edges of the plane with extra storage. I suppose what I wanted for the main space is the simplest gesture possible. It's a horizontal plane oriented towards the view. The large window in the living faces east, and you get that sense of how it transitions throughout the day, from morning sun streaming in all the way to purple hues of the evening. These small spaces, it's all about doing simple things to build upon the basic fundamentals of living. And the space starts to unfold itself.
My client for this project is a young couple. This is their first home, and they are unashamedly minimalists. The apartment had been untouched for the best part of 50 years. It had very, very strong 1960s and early 1970s design cues. The clients really understood and knew what they wanted. Importantly, that was to maintain that very 1960s, 70s sensibility. This apartment is very near Rushcutters Bay Park and Rushcutters Bay Foreshore. It's very close to the city of Sydney, and it's in a really wonderful, walkable neighbourhood. This building was built in 1970. The first point of their brief was to have something very open, light and airy. In the kitchen space, they wanted to use a lot of timber elements to sort of hark back to that mid-century style, retro appliances where possible. And they were also very interested to have a breakfast bar come dining area. So that was a very important part of their brief. The apartment was in original 50-year-old condition. There was carpet throughout, and in the contained kitchen was linoleum. It was a very retro and very original, untouched feel. This was always a studio apartment, just with a separate kitchen. The only change that we made to the floor plan was to remove the walls that encapsulated the kitchen to make a larger open space. When you enter the apartment, you're immediately hit with a really lovely warm and honeyed light bouncing off the timber and the cork flooring and the warm colours within the apartment. There are concealed cupboards for umbrellas, bags, shoes. There is a folding wall seat that makes use of the space that is otherwise void. And there are some playful mid-century style wall hooks above the folding wall seat. Very common in 1950s through 1980s was cork flooring, and cork is a very sustainable material and it's great for acoustics, so we've opted to use cork in this apartment. In the living room, the function wall consists of a built-in sofa. Underneath the sofa are some drawers with mirrored fronts, so they look almost like they're not there and the sofa is lighter. And over the top of the sofa is a built-in queen Murphy bed. When the bed is pulled down, it rests on the ottoman of the sofa. For one occupant, there is a fold-down bedside, and for the other, there is a built-in and recessed storage niche. Conveniently, the wardrobe is 1.5 times a conventional depth because it marries with the front face of the sofa, and that means that we can hang clothes all the way along the front and then have folded storage all the way down the back. The mustard of the wardrobe matches really nicely with the mustard on the pendant lamp. The handles for the wardrobe and the handles for the fold-down bed are all custom made in the same timber as the kitchen joinery. Directly opposite the sofa is a mix of open shelving for books and concealed storage that makes use of the double-depth island. They had no need for a television. The clients had a direct liking for teak, and we have used the Australian-grown equivalent, which is Tasmanian blackwood. A breakfast bar divides the kitchen from the living space and features a dining area for 2 people. The breakfast bar is supported by a bespoke raw brass leg. The laminate benchtop adhered to plywood is in direct reference to mid-century style when laminate benchtops were very common, and they often featured a timber edge. The mirrored niche is a play on the old mid-century room dividers, and the mirrors really bounce that light around and bring that sense of space to the kitchen. The tambour door unit is great because when the kitchen is in use, you simply slide the door up and you have all of those things at hand. There's bulk overhead storage over the kitchen. The brown tiles used throughout the kitchen and the bathroom are a direct reference to the tiles that were here prior to the removal of the old fit-out. There's a series of small sconces fitted to the ceiling and to the walls. That is a 1970s design. The timber surfaces wrap from the kitchen around the bathroom. A custom brass reveal lines the bathroom entry threshold. The walls are tiled floor to ceiling in a small mosaic that reference the old kitchen tile. We used custom terrazzo tiles on the floor. Brass detailing is consistent in the bathroom. The bathroom cabinetry has numerous integrated LED lighting and an intricate handle detail for opening the bathroom cabinet without putting fingerprints on the mirror. We've used curves to vary the depth of the bathroom joinery so that when you're using the area above the basin, the depth is narrower, and then for open shelving, the depth is accentuated. We've varied the handle detail in the bathroom because it's a different space to the rest, and we've opted to use a hole. Together with my clients, we've taken a fairly restorative approach to the renovation of this apartment. It hadn't been touched in 50 years, but with this renovation, we've ensured comfortable occupation for the next 50 years. It's been upgraded with modern technology and new services. We've used custom furniture and overlapping functions to achieve a really tailored space. We've basically given this apartment a second lease on life.
It's built in the 60s. It consists of 8 studio units. The apartment is about 29 square meters. When we found this place, it was an old studio unit. The bed was in the living area. We saw the potential to change it. The first thing was to remove the kitchen out and turn it into a proper 1-bedroom. When we worked on this project, I wanted to try out a few ideas of our own. So the idea was to create a hotel home hybrid to this space. We were inspired by Japan and Scandinavia as well. So we wanted to create a minimal, clean, luxe interiors to this space. I wanted to create a warm ambience to the space. So naturally, I decided to use timber for the floors, plywood for the walls, and plywood for the ceiling. This creates a feeling of that you're in a cabin space. You just feel relaxed when you come in. For the kitchen, we decided to contrast the birch plywood with black metal countertops with perforated screens. The reason why we use perforated screen is to ensure that if you have a guest or if you're using the space, you ultimately can see what's behind the screens. What we've placed in here is actually the fridge. Of course, you have the drawers for the cutlery, storage for the plates, the kettle, the toasters as well. We also managed to put in a washer dryer into the space
I would call it the services corner. In this space, we need to create a statement piece as well, so we decided to create a custom-made light for the kitchen. So the light actually washes the space and it creates a cozy feel to it. Because this space is compact at 29 square meters, we need to find space to store all our things. So the idea was to create a wall of joinery to hide all our items behind it. So we managed to put in a laundry, we have pantry, and we managed to put in the microwaves. We made a conscious effort to make sure that the doors are hidden, so it's a push-open system to minimize the visual clutter to the space. We tried to tie in the overall look with the kitchen, so we also have a hidden perforated sliding door that separates the bedroom from the living room. We wanted the door first to act as a visual privacy to the users, but also actually allows light to the space and also allows a cross ventilation across the room for this tiny compact space as well. For the bedrooms, we decided to raise the floor to house the services from the kitchen, and we also decided to put the bed on the plinth just to create a seamless transition of the space to make it feel bigger and to reinforce the feeling that you're in Japan. The beds are on a tatami mat, but on here it's resting on the plinth. We decided to integrate the wardrobe and the shelving space above the bed to maximize the space usage. For the ensuite, we wanted to make it feel special, to make it feel luxurious. So the idea of using black metal with white tiles actually reinforced a clean, simple, luxe feel to it. We wanted to create a generous ensuite space. And the way to enforce it was to use the gridded tiles from floor to ceiling. It gives you a perception of that the space is almost infinite. We decided to use black metal and a black pole with a mirror to the ensuite. It gives it a visual focus to the space. It also ties in with the kitchen. The color palette that we choose for this space is pretty simple. It's just birch plywood, black metal, and white tiles. And you find that it's just consistent throughout the space. I wanted to try and make a compact space work by showing people that you don't need such a big space to live. Most people will think that 29 square meters maybe is more suited for maybe a single person, but when I live in with my wife, we are quite happy.
Never Too Small Magazine Issue 1. Jam-packed with stories, surprises, ideas and inspiration, all with you city dwellers in mind. Step into the world of Atama, where romanticism, artisanal craftsmanship and Italian flair are distilled into jewel box-like apartments. Visit the studio of Ramesh Mario Nithyanjan, where Barbie, big cats and Buddhas inspire his colourful creations. Explore 3 of our favourite small footprint homes from around the world, each featuring nifty pull-out floor plans, and discover a treasure trove of vintage and pre-loved apartment finds. Interrogate the origins and appeal of a slouchy 70s icon. And meet our mate, Robbie Neville, who wants us to get better at making shit with the shit we already have. Find out why the Barbican is London's greatest mistake, and discover a new breed of pet furniture designed for style and our small footprint lives. Plus, there's storage porn, sexy bikes, chairs with bums, and a beautiful pull-out poster surprise. Buy issue 1 now in our store or join the NTS Sub Club and never miss an issue, all while enjoying free shipping. Visit nevertoosmall.com/magazine.
Tara is a building that was completed in 1920 in the Art Deco style. This apartment is located in Elizabeth Bay, which is in very close proximity to the city. And on the doorstep of this apartment is wonderful amenity restaurants, cafes, everything that you could want. Our client for this project was very much inspired by a trip to New York and a visit to a renowned compact apartment in New York. This apartment is a 30 square metre space. There's 25 square metres in the studio space and then a further 4.5 or 5 in the bathroom. The layout exists primarily as it was. The client was very inspired by minimalist interior design and really wanted a very clean and crisp and contemporary product for the design of his space. It was very important to work with the existing structure. So there are a lot of columns present within the space. Some of them are housed within the joinery and some of them are left expressed. Our idea was to shift the bulk of the apartment to the perimeter walls or to the outside walls to create a really large, open and fluid space through the middle of the apartment. We embraced, I guess, the idea of studio living rather than create unnecessary or deliberate delineation or zoning within the space. Running along one length of wall beyond the kitchen is a function wall, and it contains a 4-seat sofa and that has a pull-out chaise. There is storage underneath, and the bed is quite unique in that it folds down over the sofa when it comes time for sleeping. The function wall wraps almost the couch and the bed to make full use of the height and ensure that no space was left unused for storage where possible. One of the advantages of having the bed fold away is that it means we have a very large, open and fluid space, which means that people can congregate in this space, which is hard in a studio environment. It was paramount for the client to be able to accommodate up to 6 guests. So we have a table that expands from being perfect for 4 people all the way through to 6 or even 8 guests. The track lighting on the ceiling creates a very flexible lighting solution. The client can move the lights along and rotate them. For instance, if they wanted to highlight a piece of art. For the design of the function wall, we wanted something very robust, which is why we decided to clad it entirely in metal. It's a very, very contemporary look and feel. It feels very sharp, very bespoke, and very unique. There's a full-height column-like structure that divides the kitchen from the bathroom. We've used a very strong white benchtop because it's located at the base of the singular window to the studio. What that does is help to flood the space with light, and the benchtop and splashback reads a little bit like a giant lantern. It has a glow. We've employed a number of compact appliances, and everything in the kitchen is concealed. There's a washer-dryer combination, so there's a pull-out dishwasher, there's a microwave, but also a very generous sized fridge. We decided to use frosted glass for the bathroom door as a mechanism or tool to be able to borrow light from the window in the bathroom and bring more light into the studio. And what's really beautiful about the glass is that at night when the lights are on in the bathroom, it helps to illuminate the space, almost like a giant lamp. All of the surfaces in the bathroom are finished in the same tile, creates a very unique geometric pattern and helps to make the bathroom feel much larger than it in fact is. There's a concealed strip light inside the shower to create a really nice ambience when showering. And there's also a full height mirror directly opposite the window to again enhance the sense of space in the bathroom. The apartment overall presents as a very simple solution, but it's in fact, there's a great deal of consideration goes into getting all of the details right. The way that the blind rolls down just behind the tap, right down to the small details like the push-touch doors in the kitchen or the concealed finger pull handles. Good design for urban living in a context such as this is very important because this makes use of a tired and drab space. And it's very important to be able to make use of existing building stock and improve upon that so that people are very comfortable living in our cities.
I think good design can have a really positive impact on people's lives, particularly in small spaces. Good design is absolutely imperative in order to get the most out of a space and to really feel comfortable in a space. This building is called Ballina. It's an Art Deco building, very close to the city of Sydney. This apartment was always a pied-à-terre for some clients of ours. They wanted for it to continue to be a pied-à-terre, but to be able to rent it out for short-term rental when they weren't here. This apartment is 22 square metres. It's really tiny. So what was really important to us was to make it feel bigger and make the stay really special and feel like you were actually at home. When we first came to visit it, the layout was completely different. It was really important for us to retain all the original features of the apartment, but try and make it a little bit more workable. We reduced the size of the bathroom so that we could sneak a little kitchen into the entry area, and that way the kitchen would be away from the sleeping area and tucked away. The kitchen was positioned at the front door, and it was designed as a black element that would almost disappear as you entered. Even though it's not very wide, the bench is quite deep, so it's quite useful. We were really confined by that dividing wall and this archway, and we really wanted to maintain all of those original features. So we looked at quite a few layouts, and it made the most sense to actually have the bed in the middle, creating a sense of symmetry and having equal importance to both sides. So when there's two people staying here, they both have the same thing. The wall along where the windows are actually had quite a few pipes and conduits, so we built it out slightly to make it all even, and then ended up with these lovely deep recesses. We thought a lot about the best location to put a sofa, and we thought it was really important to be able to sit back and look out of the windows. Previously, because the kitchen was up against the windows, you couldn't really sit anywhere and enjoy it. By having this joinery piece here, you separate the sleeping zone from the living space, and you just see over the top of the bed, and you can enjoy the view from the windows. By elevating the bed platform, we could separate the living area from the sleeping area. It also meant that we could raise the floor to the bathroom, so all the plumbing could be reworked without causing any inconvenience to any of the apartments below. So we wanted the bathroom to be a really lovely experience. We thought it would be lovely to have a timber battened floor all the way through the bathroom. We copied that onto the ceiling, and it gives you this beautiful smell like a sauna. Good design will always take into account natural light. The idea with the mirror was that it creates a sense of depth. Lying in bed, you still get a reflection of the beautiful view. Even though the apartment is so small, there's a place for everything. Little details that you might not necessarily think about in a big house are really important here, like the fold-out ironing board. Everything has a place. We have a lot of wall-hung floating units so that you still get a sense of the whole footprint of the rooms and give you a sense of more space. We've got hidden lighting under the cabinets and above to create atmosphere. We really loved the original Art Deco detail of the apartment, and so everything that's new has also been given the same amount of attention to detail. In a building like this, the details actually add to the character and to the story of the apartment.
When you see the building on the street, it's a pretty uninspiring block of flats. There's nothing better than somebody having a smile and saying, oh, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I think I like to add value and create experiences for other people to enjoy and to bring delight. So this place, it was a studio apartment, one room, as you can see. The bare bones of it and the potential, I think, was there. Bad kitchen with like an L-shaped thing with, you know, laminate worktop, horrible bathroom. It was just a bit grim, and you sort of felt a bit sad coming in here. When people first walk in, they're a little bit, you know, gobsmacked. The preconception maybe with small space living is that it's this sort of, living in a shoebox, and actually it's about how it connects to its locality. What's that relationship? You're not necessarily mean you have to compromise your living. You can still have your own personality, to be a little bit more experimental and live as you want to live. It's just thinking a little bit differently. The first one as you come in is this raised plinth, so that's actually built up off the floor. Coming from England, I've always had a thing about having baths, so wherever I can, I try and squeeze a bath in. I think there's something very relaxing about bathing and relaxation. Also, really like the idea of taking the bath out of the bathroom and putting it into another space, so you can be in the bath, soaking and relaxing whilst looking out the window or, having a glass of wine. Isn't that fantastic? And then the idea with the kitchen is it's not a kitchen, it's basically a steel box that kind of sits on the marble podium. Using objects or elements that have multi-uses is kind of a really nice way to have dynamic things happening in small spaces. The bed in a gold box. So the idea is when it's up, we can hang out here, it can be a dance floor, it can be a studio to work in, and then this thing can fold down. So we're sort of animating the space here. The idea that the door is also sort of a mirror, sort of a gold sheen, so it has that really nice warmth to it. As it slides, sort of, I guess, captures different views of the opposite wall. And then the other one is this big steel pivot door, so that in the summer can be open, getting some fresh air in. Lighting can really kind of affect the mood and the ambience of the space. And so, yeah, they create, I guess, little pockets. The bathroom has its own light. The bath has one that's on a dimmer, so it just softens it, So I would sort of pick out certain things and certain ambiences and have a variety of lighting rather than light the whole thing up with some sort of Batman cave. The ceiling kind of painted it with this dark colour to try and make it feel more intimate and cosy, which then sort of graduates down to the ground, so it sort of hugs you a bit. Buildings are, made of steel and bricks and structural things, and so sometimes it's about taking things off to reveal. That also a really nice idea of, discovery, or, a little bit of a homage to the building itself. I don't think this would be something that would work everywhere. It's just, I guess, about where it is and the nature of what it was, I think, yeah.
The idea of rationalising everything into one joinery unit is a very reductive approach, whereby we can shift everything to the boundary and create an open fluid space. The very simple material composition and detailing is related to my client's interest in a German designer called Nils Holger Mormann, where laminated plywood, laminate in various shades, are detailed in such a way that gives a very minimal aesthetic. This apartment is located in Rushcutters Bay in Sydney. Rushcutters Bay is right on the doorstep of Sydney City. It's a really special neighbourhood in that it's entirely walkable. This building was built in the mid-1960s. The apartment is a total of 27 square metres. Our client was most inspired by a previous project of ours called Tara. But the client also had a very distinct idea of how that design could be adapted for this space and for his needs. The original condition was very simple and a little bit tired. The only change that we made to the layout was to remove the original built-in cupboard that divided the entry door from the kitchen. The primary objective for this apartment was to conceal everything in a single unit. The new joinery insertion is arranged from kitchen through to general storage, a place to work, a place to sleep, which is overlapped by the television. Upon entry, you're immediately into the studio space, with the bathroom being a separate compartment to your right. The living and dining is an open plan space that feeds from the kitchen through towards the balcony. When my client moved from Germany to Sydney, he brought with him a dining table, a sofa, stools and dining chairs. The living room is defined by a simple sofa that faces the television. Once we had accounted for all of the functional requirements, there was no obvious space left for a television. So we conceived of a sliding panel that would conceal firstly the Murphy bed and secondly the office space. The handle for the Murphy bed is accessed by lifting up the fronts of the cabinets overhead, and the cabinet fronts fall naturally back into position. The client, who works entirely from home, needed a substantial workspace. Concealed behind the sliding door is a niche containing a work from home office. The depth of the desk is greater than the depth of the bed, so it is required that it is a folding element. Next to the workspace, a secondary, smaller work surface conceals the cable management system. A banner of overhead storage runs from the end of the pod at the Murphy bed all the way through to the overheads of the kitchen. A sizable two-door wardrobe divides the kitchen from the office space. A combination sheer curtain and block-out curtain add a really warm and soft ambience to the space. The sheer curtain allows my client to filter light during the day, and the block-out curtain is activated at sleeping and when my client wants that truly cinematic experience. The kitchen is a direct response to the functional requirements of my client. It's L-shaped and makes best use of where the existing services were, but also the need to integrate new and modern appliances. The kitchen contains a full-size flip-down dishwasher, an oven, an induction cooktop. There is a concealed service cupboard for a hot water unit and for a meter. And we have a sink with concealed bin storage. And there's also a full-size integrated fridge. Integrated LED lighting is fitted underneath the overhead cabinets in the kitchen. For an apartment of this size, there is really ample, clean work surface in the kitchen. Underneath the service cupboard is a slender cabinet accessed from the kitchen side for things like vacuum, yoga mat, backpacks. There's a neat scallop detail at the base of that cabinet, which means that we can run cable for power to the table for a desk lamp or a laptop. A glass door divides the studio space from the bathroom and allows natural light to permeate through the bathroom window and into the studio. The bathroom is a very challenging space because it's very small at only 2.5 square metres. The shower exists in a very small alcove, so we employed a 3-panel folding shower screen system, and when the panels are opened, it means that the shower is a much larger compartment. The vanity is a wall-mounted and floating unit, and adjacent to that is the bathroom cabinet. The mirror is fitted to the back of the door so that the mirror is visible when the client is using the contents of the cabinet. All of the walls are finished in micro cement. There is a simple wall-mounted light fixture directly above the basin, and then a secondary tube light that emits a very bright light for showering. To rework an apartment such as this is to elevate the internal spaces to match that of the architectural intent of the original building. It then means that we can use outcomes such as this as a case study, not only for other people in the building, but also for future development.
I live here with my partner and my medium-sized dog. It's a 24 square metre apartment, and we seem to get along fine. My name is Nick Aegis, and I'm an architect and an educator. Cairo Apartments, it's an Art Deco building completed in 1936, designed by Best Overend. It's a good example of an Art Deco building in Melbourne. It has a lot of kind of hallmarks of the era with details of ocean liners and ships. One of the big design strategies I employed in here was to move the bedroom out of this main space into where the existing kitchen used to be. I was interested in creating a suite of different spaces rather than completely clearing out walls and doors and turning it into one big space in a smaller footprint, which seems sort of paradoxical to what you would want to do to create a spacious apartment, but it seemed to make sense here. and to draw focus on the existing details of the building, which I thought were really special. I didn't want my design to compete or overtake with those. More, I wanted it to complement them. The kitchens are sort of merge in between the toolbox and the cabinetry bench, and then it sort of unfolds and opens up, and everything has its place. The aesthetic and the way the kitchen is put together is to have a very simple, kind of almost farm-like structural system that runs through it. The materials of the kitchen, driven by wanting things to be able to age and patina and develop a characteristic through use. So when the kitchen's closed, the space out here completely transforms into a sort of really nice, quiet space. Things in an apartment tend to be a bit more hybridised. A door is also a bookshelf and a pantry, and that allowed me to close the bedroom off and have a separate space. I didn't want to ruin the cross ventilation and the sort of light penetration that existed already in this apartment, so parts of the design allow for airflow and light penetration through those spaces. These apartments have quite generous ceiling height, so there's a crawl space underneath the bed, there's room for a washing machine, and there's a little sort of ladder which stores our shoes. The apartment faces north, so I get a lot of fantastic light without having to rely on too much artificial lighting during the day. All of my light fittings, they're hidden away in the joinery and they uplight the roof so the light gets a really beautiful wash. The original design of the bathroom also included a dressing room. So it's sort of a 19th century detail where there's a dressing room with a wash basin in there. One thing about a small apartment as well, I think, was that I used to help me was to limit the materials that you have. I tried to keep a continuity of materials throughout the whole apartment. The floor is the same in the bathroom as it is in the kitchen, as it is in the bedroom. And limiting those materials just means there's sort of less clutter in terms of transitions in between different rooms.
The key idea for this apartment was to combine the sleeping areas, part of the kitchen, and the storage areas into one central unit. And the unit itself is inspired by the age-old Japanese TANSU chests. This apartment building is located in Sydney, in a small suburb called Elizabeth Bay, which is in very close proximity to the Sydney CBD. This building was built in 1970. All four sides of the apartment block are open, and each unit benefit from having a balcony and gain cross ventilation from its proximity to the harbour. And there's a beautiful park right on the doorstep of the building. The original condition of the apartment was quite tired. There was a makeshift kitchen in the studio space, and a bedroom had been inserted where the kitchen once was. The common theory here would be that we shift all of the utility to the perimeter and we're left with a fluid space in the middle, and that gives us a sense of space. So what we decided to do was remove the party wall that divided the kitchen from the studio space and create an open plan. Although it seems a somewhat ironic solution, we conceived of a double-sided storage unit, and we were inspired for the storage unit by the age-old Japanese TANSU chests. And this storage unit would, in a sense, dictate how the apartment could be used and manipulated for everyday use. The living space is a multifunction space. It doubles as the bedroom at night, and it's a space to sit down, relax, benefit from the view, and be separate to the utility spaces. The built-in bench seat has a considerable amount of storage, but we wanted to give this element a sense of lightness On 3 sides it has a reflective surface, and there is a continuation therefore of the floor running through, and it appears as though it is a floating element rather than a bulky element. There's a small surface to one side of the bench seat which allows the occupant to come in and place items that they may have at hand directly on the bench. The pod is deliberately separate from the structure. We wanted it to feel more like a piece of furniture, and for that reason it doesn't extend all the way to the ceiling. There's a distorted mirror to provide reflection immediately upon entry, and what that does is it reduces the visual bulk of the pod and reflects the other part of the living room, and immediately gives you a greater impression of space than you would have if it was a solid element. The elevation of the storage unit that faces the living space houses a queen folding bed and an integrated storage niche behind the bed, television and AV cupboard, and there is also a folding bedside for use. The storage pod contains integrated lighting. There is an integrated light behind the bed. There is illumination on top of the pod that provides a soft bounced light, and there is integrated light in the art niche. At the ends of the pod, there are matching folded integrated tables. What this enables us to do is exploit the space that is otherwise left void simply for circulation. We've imagined one as a dining surface and one as a work surface. The dining surface is linked to the kitchen and the work surface is by the window. We have split the kitchen into 2 sides. One is the primary kitchen for cooking and for washing, and on the other side the kitchen has bled into the storage pod where we have the pantry, the bulk of the storage, and the integrated refrigerator. The client was very particular about how he wanted the kitchen arranged. For instance, he's put the oven very, very low because he doesn't prioritise cooking with the oven. Instead, he prioritises cooking on the benchtop surface, and he prioritises having all of the things that he needs while he's cooking at hand and higher to the benchtop. At the far end of the pod, we exploit the hallway, and it's imagined almost like a walk-in robe. The robe is positioned directly opposite the bathroom, so we've linked those 2 pieces of utility. The bathroom is accessed via a sliding door so that we don't inhibit the space upon accessing the bathroom. The client had a preference for a black geometric tile in the bathroom, but we've paired that with areas of blank white wall so that the black wasn't over-dominant in the space. The 3/4 height blade wall doesn't make the shower feel hemmed in because it's quite a small shower. The joinery unit is shaped or angled to allow greater circulation within the space. Because the cabinet is cut on an angle, we've decided to have the mirror on the back of the cabinet so that when you open the cabinet, all of your stuff is accessible and the mirror faces the user. There's a full height and full width mirror at one end of the shower. This reflects the length of the bathroom across its longest axis and really gives us a really nice sense of space. One of the key advantages of the central pod is that the walls are blank space, and this allows the client to put their touches on the place, be it art or decoration, etc. We employ an experimental approach that attempts to exceed the expectations of our clients and create dynamism in small spaces and improve, ultimately, the livability of small spaces.
Sign up to our newsletter for subscriber-only content and exclusive offers. Visit nevertoosmall.com/subscribe.